Hello and welcome back to the SAP's podcast. This is season 1, episode 10 of our watch of HBO's The Leftovers, entitled The Prodigal Son Returns. My name's Sam, and as always I'm joined by my two very nice co-hosts, Ant.
Yeah, I think the title of the episode is just referring to my return, as that key character,
Return from what?
Last week.
Fuck off. Brilliant. And that's your other co-host, Phil. Yeah, that's his intro. Let's just move straight on. So, as we say every week, our spoiler policy is that there'll be no future spoilers. So we'll only be spoiling this current episode and all the episodes that have gone before. And, if this seems like a nice short and sharp intro, it's meant to be, because this is going to be one big boy episode. So let's just get straight into it. So we open up this episode with where we left off from episode 8, with Patty lying dead on the floor, absolutely covered in blood, after slashing her own throat when she's in the little cabin with Kevin. And Kevin's just sitting next to her, and he lights up a cigarette, and, at this point, he's not making any kind of attempt to cover up. He seems to have accepted, I don't know, what's happened and what might happen going forward. He's just using his phone with all the blood over his hands. He's not thinking, okay, how am I going to get out of this at this current point? And then we see Jill, and she's still at the Guilty Remnant house, and she starts lighting up a cigarette, and Laurie just takes it straight from her.
So the first thing I thought about the scene was, when you see Kevin's reflection in the blood?
Yeah.
For me, I couldn't help but kind of think back to seeing Kevin reflected in the eyes of the deer. That's very much how it felt, kind of touching on this self-reflection of Kevin.
Yeah, it's a nice parallel.
Yeah, that's how I saw it when he first opened up to it.
Mama. Starting off the episode strong.
Oh, thought I'd come in hot.
It's all downhill from here.
I was going to say, that's literally the best point if we stop here.
Sign out now, Phil. Just sign out.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Speak to you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you for season 2.
But what I was going to say is, what happened to the dog killer? Did I miss something? Because he's not in the cabin.
No, he did say goodbye. He kind of said something to a voice or kind of to himself. He walked out.
Sorry, yeah, I think basically he tried to kill Patty, didn't he? Kevin saved her, and then we was discussing if he was talking to some sort of disembodied, body, or if he was just talking to Patty, and he just left. He was basically like, "Fine, if you want to save her, I'm out of it."
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So that was one thing I was sitting there going, "Where's DK and all this?" But he's already gone.
Where's Dean?
Oh. But also, kind of moving on from Kevin's scene and that kind of self-reflection, looking at the dead body of Patty, to then going to the Good Riddance house and seeing Jill sitting across the table from Laurie, and Jill starting to look. Have we seen Jill smoke at this point before?
No.
Was she not smoking a joint in the park with Amy and a friend?
I thought it was Amy and the two the two fantastic twins.
Well, she might have taken a drag of it, but let's not get hung up on that point. I don't think.
Okay, but it was more just a kind of that when Laurie sits down to look across from her, and it's quite hard to actually gauge Laurie's feelings about the situation at first. Other than that slight power move of taking the cigarette off her and starting to smoke herself, I couldn't really pick up what Laurie was thinking at the time.
Sure, I mean, Laurie's conflict and seeing her own daughter there and then taking it from her, it shows that she hasn't fully bought in to the Guilty Remnant, because if you were full on indoctrinated, then you'd want everyone to join, family members or not, but she clearly doesn't want Jill to be involved, so that's why she was taking the cigarette. She wants to protect her daughter. She probably knows about the operation they're going to do, and they know about the retribution that's going to follow. So I think that probably explains that bit with Laurie. Mm-hmm. Just on the opening, I mean, it was very striking, wasn't it, seeing Patty's dead body? But then, they seem to have shown in the past couple of episodes, Kevin smoking. So obviously we knew he used to smoke before the departure. He smokes now, we smoke to remember. And it's probably nothing, but maybe they're showing him going back to his former self a little bit, or maybe the parallel with the GR. I'm not really sure why they're focusing on it too much, but that's my stab at it anyway.
I did wonder if that was him trying to take on like the GR's message in some way, or trying to show he understood or registered what Patty was trying to get across to him. But I couldn't quite put my finger on it why he was smoking, other than it's just a very stressful situation, and perhaps relapsing into smoking helps him get through that. So I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, I'd probably lean just towards the latter kind of explanation there, that, you know, he's just like, because we know he likes to smoke, and he's just like, oh fuck it, like I'm probably going to end up in prison or something. So yeah, let's just have a smoke, like one last bit of enjoyment. But that is the thing with this program, isn't it? You could very much think, okay, well, does he understand and, you know, make those links that you're talking about and not sound like, you know, someone who doesn't know what they're on about? Like, it does make you think, are the showrunners kind of playing with you a little bit, you know, putting things in there that don't mean anything, knowing that we'll be like, oh, well, what does smoking mean? You know,
are they playing your intelligence, though?
Like, they're pretty much playing my intelligence. So next we see Tom and Christine, and they're driving somewhere, and she doesn't seem in, you know, a great kind of place. I don't mean physically. Well, probably physically as well. I mean, I'm sure her life's not turned out exactly as she'd hoped at this current point. But, you know, you can't blame her for not looking particularly happy, you know, with how things gone. She's had a pretty tough time of it. But Tom tells her that he's going to take care of her and the baby, and that they don't need Holy Wayne because they know he's not coming back. But then a few seconds later, Christine has abandoned the baby in the bathroom of, I think, a petrol station. She's basically just done a runner. I feel like the reason why she's done this is because she can't look at the baby without just being reminded of Holy Wayne, who she feels obviously really betrayed by. Because I think you see a few times where she kind of looks at her daughter, but, you know, doesn't seem to have much of a loving look in her eyes, and there's obviously that raw pain that she'll keep feeling every time she thinks of Holy Wayne. So that's my just little interpretation on that. Yeah,
it's probably that, plus the fact that, you know, it's not a baby she wants anymore because, you know, she feels betrayed by the dad. She's on the run, going from state to state, it seems. And although, you know, I obviously don't agree with abandoning the baby like that, it was obviously a really shitty thing to do, but you can kind of see the logic somewhat. But, you know, you've got Tom being a real good influence. He's taking it on, saying he's going to look after her and help raise the baby. And I think it was like that was maybe the reassurance that she needed before she went. Either way, it's a really bad situation for Tom to find himself in, and it's really bad from Christine. Whether she'll turn up again later in the series to try and reclaim it back, because obviously the baby's going to have some sort of importance, I feel. Maybe it's the Antichrist, I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see if she comes back for sure.
Yeah, it will be. I initially thought, I see what you're saying with, you know, kind of feeling betrayed by Holy Wayne and being told that this baby was going to be special. You know, it was going to, you know, I got the impression she thought it was going to be a boy. I think we discussed this a couple of episodes ago. And the fact it was a girl was a little bit disappointing. She's not heard from Holy Wayne. But I also just got an overarching sense of impression of just postnatal depression, because she's, you know, it's just her and Tom. They've got no real support other than each other.
Sure.
You know, the money's gone. That we know that Tom had to give half the remaining money to the other couple. I can't remember the other couple's names, but, you know, so it's quite a bleak situation. They're living out of their car, and because she's only supposed to be she's still a teenager as far as I'm aware. So this has got to be quite a, you know,
it's a lot to take on.
It's a lot to take on, especially at that age, and I can kind of get her just wanting to, you know, get out because of everything that's happening.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even though I think anyone would say, you know, it's not a good thing to do. You can 100% understand why she would get to that point where she would do it. So, yeah, I don't think any of us are being too, you know, obviously you got to be hard on her somewhat for abandoning her baby, but, you know.
But that was the one thing I was a bit confused by, because when this is, the baby's wet, so he goes, I'll take it and get changed. And he goes, no, I'll go and do it. And I was kind of thinking, well, wouldn't it have made more sense? I know it might just be like a logical fallacy, but would it have made more sense for her to allow Tom to go change the baby than just leaving the baby in the changing bathroom by itself, if that makes sense? Running away whilst Tom's taking care of the baby, not just dropping the baby off in the bathroom. It was just a little thing I thought about.
She obviously wasn't thinking straight. I mean, at the end of the day as well, I'm no expert, but I'm fairly sure if you do not want your baby, you can take them towards the authorities and they'll take them into a foster home. You don't just leave them in the middle of a bathroom, do you? Waiting for the someone else to come forward.
She knows as well that Tom isn't going to... At that point, she's just like, I want to get out of this situation. If she says to Tom, you know, I want to give up, he's probably going to argue with her somewhat, maybe try to convince her out of it. And, you know, it's not just a case of, okay, well, we drop it off at the doorstep at this other place. I'm sure there's like a process and everything. So at that point, she's just thinking, look, and I think with what you're saying, Phil, I think if Tom goes, then maybe... Well, actually, no, I think I've just realised exactly what it was. I think the answer is that she's probably just lying that the baby's wet. So, so if Tom took it...
He'd realise something was up.
Sorry, her, yeah. If Tom took it, he'd be like, no, she's not, and then, you know.
Sure.
Okay. So that's probably it. But so there's going to be a few of these little questions from me in this episode. So we have a little scene where Tom gets offered help by a stranger who I think is part of like a church group, and the guy's like genuinely, you know, offering help and says that he does it to lots of people, and lots of people do say yes. But what do you guys make of this kind of like interaction?
I felt it was a very sincere offer of help, and I mean, it was, overarching, I think it was a genuine offer to help. But what I quite liked is how hard it is for Tom to accept the offer, or even to a certain extent believe the offer is genuine. It was the impression I was getting. He seemed quite distrustful of this man who's with no obvious ulterior motive trying to come and help him. But it'd be good to also understand why the man thought Tom was someone who needed help. I mean, I know we see Tom emptying his car of rubbish, but I don't think the man could have seen that. So it'd be quite good to know why the man identifies Tom as a person that needs help here.
Sure, yeah.
But it also made me oddly hopeful in a way. You know, I'm not sure if it's the first time we've seen such a genuine offer of help from other members, from anyone else on this show at all, to be honest. It made me feel oddly hopeful.
It's quite a bleak programme, isn't it, in a lot of times, and like you say, I don't think we've seen, well, nothing springing to mind where someone doesn't seem to have an ulterior motive, and, you know, just wants to help. So no, I agree there, Phil.
I do agree, Phil. I did think he was sincere, but when you kind of go back and think about it, and the way I think about the show now is that nothing's in there that doesn't almost have a double meaning. I thought, well, maybe he could have been a distraction, working in cahoots with Holy Wayne. Did he sense that Christine was gone? Was he, you know, and he was asking asking Tom if he needed help because of that? Mm-hmm. Was he just, you know? Do you think he asked Christine and she said yes? I mean, I know these are, you know, they probably didn't happen, but it does kind of make you think. A little bit. And so where did Christine go? I mean, she just ran into the night, basically, I guess. I did think, you know, it would have been quite funny if we saw her on the back of the bus. I did actually have a look.
Same, but I did as well.
I couldn't see it. It was after I saw the way it was shot. Sorry,
after I saw your note in the document, I actually went back to try and see if I could see her on the bus. I couldn't, but I thought that would have been such a clever little thing to have happened if they had done that.
Yeah, she'd be lying down anyway, wouldn't she?
Yeah.
What's your take, Pastry? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I'm tending to think... Oh, sorry, by the way, I like how you've just called me Pastry. And I just accepted it on this public forum. But anyway, no, I don't know. I don't know, really. I'm struggling to work it out. I do quite like the idea that it is just showing that there is still some good left in the world and, you know, a genuine offer. But I do like Phil's thoughts about that. It's more the point of the scene is more of a reflection on Tom, and that he's not going to accept the help or anything like that. But then we see kind of towards the end of the episode that, you know, he's not fully going it alone. So I don't know, to be honest. Part of me thinks that there isn't anything more meaningful going on to it, but it seems like the kind of thing that that would have something kind of behind it, especially given what we know about this programme and everything we've seen. So, no, that might be an unsatisfactory answer, but I'm struggling to really come down on this.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sam.
Yeah, yeah, we could just cut all that out. So, at the Good Riddance house, Laurie asks Jill why she's there, and Laurie tells her, look, it's not safe tonight. And Meg's just pressing her on whether they should go ahead with whatever they've had planned for Memorial Day. And Laurie basically starts pleading with Jill, just go home. And Jill tells her, well, all right, talk then. But she won't do it. You know, she won't come back to kind of Jill's side of things. So Jill's like, okay, well, I'm going to come over to yours. And she gets up, starts getting changed into the kind of guilty remnant white uniform. And Laurie then tells the rest of the group, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Jill's obviously been naive, right? Because she knows what the GR are all about, but she kind of turns up just wanting her mom to talk. But she doesn't quite understand the gravity of the situation. She thinks, mom and daughter will just have a nice catch up, considering, they haven't seen each other or spoken to each other for a very long time. So, at the end of the day, Laurie should just take Jill off to that motel. She's the kind of de facto leader now. She can have that buffet.
Oh,
Was it a buffet? It was
all day breakfast, wasn't it?
Patty ordered the breakfast, didn't she? Because I remember her being like, yeah, she wants 2 slices of bacon, slice of toast. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a buffet, but they bring it to you. So, not a buffet, but yeah.
I love how that's what kind of, like, I'm like, no, it wasn't a buffet. as if it matters.
Yeah, it's the illusion of choice. Anyway.
Well, we'll see later. We'll see later that food actually plays an important role in this episode. So, hold that thought, Sam.
It's true. As I mentioned, I'd wondered if the taking the cigarette, I think, was a power move by Laurie. But also, I like how Jill immediately tries to communicate with Laurie, not by speaking, but by writing. Like, it's not like Laurie's gone deaf, if that makes sense. Like, she can still, Jill could ask that question. Instead, she decides to write it, which is faster than, for instance, Meg, who still continues to ask Laurie questions when she's first being initiated verbally, and then at the end of the episode starts writing. So it's interesting that Jill goes straight into that medium of communication with her mum. What I thought was fantastic was the sudden switch into the song choice. Like the instrumental version of Nothing Else Matters. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a great choice, because could you find a better song to exemplify what the Good Riddance think, if that makes sense? And Nothing Else Matters, like, that's so on the nose. It was so
that's one on the nose counter. Ding.
Exactly. But I was actually desperately searching for another way to say that, because I wanted to avoid that exact I just couldn't think of a more succinct way of saying it. But yeah, so it was such a great song choice. And it's also, I think it's one of the longest periods we have without anyone talking, because no one talks over the song, do they? There's no other communication over the music. No, I thought it was quite interesting.
Maybe a bit of clicking from Meg.
Oh yeah, I did like that. It's like she was more. I liked how Meg was more focused, like clicking, like, "Are we still doing this? Are we still going ahead? Still pushing Laurie?"
Well, I think with Meg, we've seen with her previously that she wants the guilty remnant to get a bit more violent with things, doesn't she? And she will know what kind of reaction what they're going to do is going to bring, as we'll discuss later in the episode. So yeah, she's well keen to get on with it. Like, you can imagine if Laurie said no, that Meg would just, like, I don't know, probably do her in or something and be like, right, okay, I'm running the show now, boys.
Yeah. It does
prison rule.
I choose violence.
Yeah. Martial law. But it does also show kind of how Laurie's still a mum, if that makes that reluctance to put her daughter in danger. She's still not quite as dedicated as she seems to appear.
No, I mean, we've been talking about that, haven't we, for weeks now, about Laurie and her conflict, and obviously it's still there for all to see. But so next we see exactly what the GR have had planned this whole time. And before we actually go on and talk about it, I just want to say that when I first started watching it, as in my first time through of watching The Leftovers, I didn't see this coming, because it's different for us and you guys, because we're doing an episode and then we're here and we're talking about it and breaking it down. But if you watch it as a fairly casual viewer, you're still just watching it. It's easy to forget about those hints almost.
Yeah.
So in Nora's episode, when you find out about the dolls, and then when you see them, because it's like that happens, and then something else takes it away. So I'm sure you guys did see this coming, but I just wanted to point out that I think quite a lot of people would have forgot about it, because I think they do a good job of setting it up, but not ramming it down your throat. So anyway, onto what the actual plan is. So they've replaced all the people who departed with those lifelike dolls that we saw in Nora's episode, and it seems to be in the exact positions that they seem to be when they departed, and wearing, if not the same clothes, definitely clothes that they had during their lives, because when they stole the pictures. And of course, Nora comes down in the morning and finds her husband and her 2 kids sitting there, and it's so uncomfortable to watch. And obviously she's absolutely horrified, and I really liked how they did shoot it actually with Nora, where they didn't just have the scream, it was silent from her, and you just had the kind of really uncomfortable, annoying white noise going on in the background. It made it even more uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot to unpack on this scene, so maybe I'll guide you through, and then if you guys just want to chip in. So, I mean, when it starts during the actual operation, when all the GR are walking out the house, there is a blue filter on the camera, right? And it doesn't appear anywhere else in the episode, and I don't think we've seen it at all in the leftovers. So what? I mean, we spoke about the colour blue a lot, Phil.
We have seen this kind of blue filter before. In the episode, when Kevin is absolutely nailing Nora.
You're right.
Yeah, there's a weird blue filter. I'm not sure if it was just in that scene, but there was a couple of other sections. I think the other scenes around that, everything was blue.
Actually, I'm not sure it's the same filter. I know there's obviously a lot of blue where Garvey Senior has been taken away. I know there is a filter there of sorts, but it's definitely not the same.
I think it is the same. The one with Kevin and Nora is definitely the same.
So I don't know what they're trying to show there with the use of lighting, but I mean, something. I know it's one of Sam's unsatisfactory answers, really.
Well, they usually use blue to show depression, don't they? And you see characters like what's her name, Christine? Yeah, she's wearing blue, for example, before she runs away, before she departs.
But I mean, they're not really depressed, are they? This is something they really want to do, the GR.
I think you go to the GR because you're feeling depressed, or there must be some, because you go because you have a feeling of emptiness, or that you're missing something, or there is something going wrong. You don't see any upbeat members of the GR.
And they definitely
happy go lucky.
You know what I mean? They don't. You're like, none of them are like, come on guys, let's do this.
No, definitely, but it's a very serious place. I don't know why in my mind now I've got the idea of Del Boy being in the GR. just starts talking every now and again. Just like, come on, it's all right. There's no one else about.
Yeah.
But they do. We've seen that they do target people who have gone through some stuff as well, don't they?
Sure. So after the you see the filter, you see there's a wide shot in a field, and there's a load of blue flags in a field, and then there's someone meditating in front of it. So all doing yoga or something like that. So obviously got the blue flags, and then the image of someone meditating we see later, don't we? And then I believe it's someone fixing a roof. And then I have to admit, the first time I watched this scene, I was a bit like, okay, so was someone still meditating? So what? And then I was like, well, why is he standing still doing the roof? And then it was only when I saw the guy with the shopping trolley, I was like, okay, this is it. Because although they've been building up to it, you kind of almost don't believe it, because it was so it's such a big moment, isn't it, really? It hit me like a ton of bricks. It's very unsettling. I mean, when you see the blurred shot of the man with the Down syndrome sitting at the table with the family portrait in the front. I mean, that was so creepy, wasn't it? Yeah. Just the way that they filmed that. Yeah. So you know he's there, but you can't see him. And I was so anxious following Nora down the stairs. Like, I was literally like, I think I even like. I know this can sound a bit weird, but I always like. I didn't want to see it. I was a bit like, oh my, just to know what her reaction. was going to be like. And then when you actually see the dolls, they're not the kind of lifelike ones that we've seen before. They're like knockoff versions, aren't they? Like the GR have done it on the cheap a little bit, haven't they?
Don't say it, Sam. Don't say it.
but they they've obviously cut costs there. But that made it a little bit more unsettling, didn't it, really?
Yeah, it was. I know what you mean. The fact that it was so. You're right. The quality of the dolls we see there aren't quite the same quality. That's, for instance, the salesman in Nora's episode.
Yeah.
Shows. So, and I do wonder, because these are kind of black market-esque ones. What I was also wondering is, there's any relation between the dolls we see here and the dolls we see on the highway in the first or second episode? When Christine's there, like, I see bodies on the road, all dressed in white, and then you see them all there. So I'd wondered if there was a link between those two.
Could be, yeah.
Or if not a direct link, but almost like a slight foreshadowing of what, the first time we get an inference of what's going to happen.
I think that's it. It's just, it's for the rewatchers, isn't it? It's, for a very astute first watcher or for the rewatcher, and they go like, yeah, see, they're telling you, but you just don't know yet.
I also wondered if there's a... So, when they stole the photos earlier on, so when they first stole them, I thought that was just that was it's the tactic to upset people. But now I'm wondering if actually stealing those photos is
to get the clothes.
Well, yeah, it's to actually get, because you need the photos to give to the people who manufacture these dolls.
Yeah. No, that's 100% what it is.
Yeah,
that's 100%.
But
I think one of us mentioned it before. Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. I thought I was onto something there.
No, but that's it. Like, that's what I mean. So we're sitting here talking about it, and so in previous episodes it might have been obvious what was happening. But if you're just watching it, maybe you're watching 3 at a time or something. Yeah. You see a shot of the dolls or something, or like a 2-minute scene, and then you move on. You're not thinking about it then.
Yeah.
So I think to most people this would have been like a real surprise.
Yeah.
Just coming back to... Sorry, Phil.
No, go.
All right. Thank you. So I mean, Nora's acting was unbelievable, wasn't it? And the choice for them to do like a silent shot was crazy. But I just knew from that moment what was going to happen later. I mean, imagine if it happened to you. You wouldn't think, would you? I think a lot of people would just go crazy, and we see that later.
Yeah.
But just the way that you had the slow build up, and for the first time you really see the models for it to be Nora as well. I thought they did a really good job there.
Yeah, it was a fantastic bit of acting. I spent the entire... I only realised they were the fake dolls, So the person meditating the field, I thought that was... in front of the flags, I thought that was just like a live shot.
Same, yeah.
And then it's only when they go to the one in the supermarket where you see the man pushing the trolley, but he's not moving. It was that moment I realised, like, oh, hang on. That's because then there's something else in the background, and I'll mention it after a couple of points. But that was the moment I realised, and as soon as I realised that, I was like, oh no, because I'd almost been apprehensive about this scene, because I think, as we talked about in the episode 2 weeks ago, kind of thinking how awful we knew it was going to be for people for this to happen when we guessed what was going to happen next. We talked about the baby, for example, the baby-sized model, and all that. So I spent like that from that moment on. I was there like, oh, Nora, just don't go downstairs. I had that real kind of please don't. And then, as you said, like this, I think the choice of putting it in silent, as Ant said, was a fantastic choice. And I also think the camera work is actually quite good, because it's slightly unstable. It's not quite perfectly fixed. It actually moves a little bit, almost shakes slightly.
Sorry, I've got to say, what do you mean? Ant said it. I said it first about the silent shot. But you giving Ant all the credit. Come on.
I think maybe Ant articulated it better. Anyway,
I think Sam's just a bit desperate just for a bit of recognition, Phil. Just give it him.
Oh, he needs it.
I told you guys had turned on me today. Go fuck yourself.
But also just want to point out, Nora's also wearing blue when she comes down to the table. And my final point, and it's on a slightly less serious note, but did you see what Ant... I don't think he was fixing the roof. I think he was clearing out the gutters. And this made me chuckle, because that's exactly what Kevin says he was doing in the first episode when he's talking to the woman in the bar, like, so what were you doing during, at the time of The Departed? And we kind of see the flashback that he's obviously...
I think you're right,
I am, I assure you. But you see him, you see him railing some woman in the woman we know will disappear in the hotel room, but he excuses, I was clearing out the gutters. So when I saw the person in the background doing that, I couldn't help but chuckle, despite how serious the scene was.
We know that Kevin wasn't lying when he said that then, because he wasn't aware.
Do you think the GR went and got like a naked doll and kind of bent her over the bed?
Can you imagine?
Right, let's move on.
I hadn't considered that. I'm not going to lie.
Do you know what? I'm not going to lie. It did come into my mind thinking, oh, what did they do with her? But, I'm not saying it. Ant thinks it. Yeah, he's like, yeah, come on. Let's say it.
Like a blow-up doll. Just... Right.
Oh, Jesus. But no, to echo what you guys said, shouts out to Carrie Coon, because, as always, she brings it in this episode. She is fucking brilliant. But so back in the woods, Kevin has actually called Matt to come to the cabin out in the woods where obviously he's there with Patty, and Matt says that Patty wanted Kevin to pay, and he says to Kevin that he's a good man. So I'm just there like, are you sure, Matt? Are you sure about that? Fucking hell, all right. But Kevin says to Matt that if he closes Patty's eyes like he wants to, then they're in this together, and Matt just goes ahead and does it, and he's like, okay, we're in it together then.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because with Matt, I've been so on the fence. Like, he obviously he really believes in his religion, and that's probably the reason why he thinks he's a good man, because he's spreading the word, and he does do some good deeds, but he also has got a bit of an edge to him as well. So you do think, well, I certainly thought when this scene was unfolding, like, is Matt like genuinely backing up Kevin? Or is he just kind of, shit stirring a little bit and just kind of getting involved? But then when he actually like closes the eyes and, effectively spreads his DNA onto the crime scene, I'm just kind of like, well, Matt does want to help, but it seems like I think we had this discussion an episode or two ago, like, would you go and help your mate cover up a crime? And it's a bit like, I don't know, is he good for doing that? Is he bad? Well, I suppose on the surface he's doing a bad thing, isn't he?
Well, the thing is, we don't exactly see Kevin and Matt be, like proper close mates, do we? So the fact that he'd go and do this for him, like, we know that Matt and Garvey Senior seem to have some kind of links, and to be on the level a little bit, and obviously Garvey Senior wants, seems to think Kevin's important and wants him involved. So maybe that's the reason. Like, I can't see any other reason why he would go and just do this for Kevin, to be honest.
What I was trying to work out is why Kevin called Matt in the first place. Like, going through the list of... to be honest, I'm not really quite sure who else he would contact, to be fair, but Matt wasn't the first person I thought he'd call to come help him. Would he have either called the police, or would he have called...
Nora? He can't call the police, can he?
Well, if he's going to be so open with Matt about what happened... Potentially he could. I don't know. You're right, but it's just I was surprised that his decision was, I'm going to call Matt, because as you just said, Sam. Let's see, I acknowledge you. They're not really that close. The only real relationship we see between them is when Matt brings Garvey Senior to the diner. So unless there's some kind of bigger plan that Matt is aware of. And Kevin isn't. I didn't quite understand that.
I mean, by calling Matt, he can potentially get away with everything. If he tells the police, he might not get done for attempted murder, but he will get done for kidnap, you would think, right? Because, there's plenty of evidence there, and he'll get done for something. So maybe that's why he went with Matt first, because he thought, I just want to get completely off scot-free,
No, but that is the thing, like, at this point... with all the episodes that we've seen so far in this season, the fact that it would call Matt, that does definitely make you kind of think like, well, why, and why does Matt go? But who knows? Maybe we'll find out a bit more going forward. Who knows? Who knows? But so they go out and they dig a grave for Patty, and Matt gets Kevin to read a passage from the Bible before they kind of put the dirt on and cover her up. And the passage basically is about how the writer, as in the writer of the passage in the Bible, has followed God despite never seeing him, never kind of having an influence from him, and going through like lots of hardships, and actually about how the writer is in fact like terrified of God. So again, I just want to actually let me just shout out to Justin Theroux as well as Carrie Coon, because like he delivers levels in this episode that I think a few people before this season was released didn't really know that he had. So again, just shouts out to Justin Theroux, you the real G. But so again, let me just ask you guys. So, what do you make of this little scene, and Matt getting him to read this passage?
So first off, I have to agree, it was fantastically acted. I thought the facial expressions, everything, really sold the scene for me. The first thing I was going to mention was that I think the passage is from the Book of Job. And as I've kind of mentioned before, Matt kind of has a bit of a link with Job. For instance, the picture we see in his house when he wakes up from his nightmare, and the picture that we see turned upside down is a picture of Job. And so it's kind of like
there's a few billboards as well. I think that kind of link to it as well. Yeah, throughout the series.
Oh yeah, you're right. So yeah, so it's quite a nice little continuation of that theme with him. If I'm completely honest, I rewatched the scene multiple times and kind of did all sorts of things to try and work it out and try and think about it. But if I'm completely honest, I don't think I fully understood it. The only thing I really took from this scene was showing how lost Kevin felt. He doesn't have the conviction that Job describes. So he still feels lost. He's tried looking but can't find an answer or anything that helps him. And then the other thing I was thinking about was what the passage he describes, if that in any way is similar to Tom's storyline here. So the struggles that Tom's been through, but still following the orders of Holy Wayne. Having some belief in his works. So, as I said, for this scene, his actual speech itself, I know you talk about how the writer's terrified of God. Don't really think Kevin's so much terrified as God as just kind of struggling with the concept of if he's a good person. But I feel I missed something and I wasn't quite sure. So it'd be interesting to hear what Ant's got to say on it.
Thank you, Phil. So, yeah, I'd agree with everything that you've said. I definitely think it's more that Kevin is worried about what's happening to him in terms of his mental / cognitive decline and how that is influencing the world around him. And when he's getting emotional, he's really thinking about the situation he finds himself in right now, and then also how the passage in the Bible is relating to him, not Patty. I don't really think he's that interested in Patty, to be honest with you. The word departed is in the passage as well. I thought that was a nice link. I don't know if it was deliberate or not. I think it's mentioned more than once as well. So was that. I just think it's like, a man who finds himself at, a real crossroads almost, isn't it? You've got the nice sunlight coming through, the trees, which is very similar to a shot with the deer and other scenes as well throughout the series. He's probably going to be framed for murder, and then everything else he's got going on that we've talked about at length in the previous 9 episodes. It just gives him a chance, to break down. Matt cares about him and his welfare. He probably hasn't really felt that support, and he's just letting it all out, having a good cry. And then, when they, after they've covered Patty's shallow grave and they start having a wash, I thought there was a lot of symbolism there for, washing away sins, almost like being baptized perhaps as well. I think you could probably make that inference.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was picking up from that scene, especially he's washing away his hands, washing the blood of his hands, as you said, washing his sins away. And the fact he then pours it over his face, and it felt quite like he was being baptized. And then when Matt comes in going, is it like feel better or feel, what's he say? What's his exact words? I'll try to think what the exact words were.
Don't worry, Phil.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. It did just feel like he wasn't just talking about does Kevin feel better just for having a wash and a change of clothes, but actually from the passage and talking about it, does he now feel better in general about a lot of things?
What's your take on the scene, Sam?
Well, I think it's quite interesting that you guys have focused in on Kevin and how this seems to, I don't know, make some sort of reference to him. But for me, I'll focus more on Matt with it because obviously he was the one who's marked out this scene or this passage for Kevin to read. And so, I don't know, I think we've questioned a little bit, you know, Matt, he seems like, I don't know, a bit of a slippery character, don't quite understand him, you know, seems to do something really nice in 1 minute and then do something a bit weird, bit dodgy in the next. But so maybe for me, it just gives a little bit of context to Matt's character because, you know, we've seen him go through lots and lots of hardships. And so you'd think, you know, maybe he would be primed to kind of giving up, joining the guilty remnant or, you know, just abandoning his faith. And so, like I say, for me, it just gives a little bit of context maybe into Matt's mind and to how he's seeing things. So that even though, you know, like I say, he's got a lot of difficulties in his life. He still believes and, you know, wants to serve his God.
So
that's my take.
You think the passage refers to Matt more than it does to Kevin then?
Well, he was the one that marked it out.
Yeah,
but didn't you mark it for Kevin?
Yeah, but he still knew of the passage and went. I think that's actually quite a good view. I was so focused on Kevin, I didn't think about Matt. But you're right, the challenges he's been through.
Oh, a saucy point from Sam for once.
Oh, mate, I think that's meaty, actually.
That's quite a meaty. I didn't think about this if the passage is for Matt, not so much for Kevin.
Come on, man, come on. But so, in the next scene, Kevin falls asleep, and so anyone who's got their Dean sequence kind of like spider senses, you know, should have been tingling pretty strongly here. But he falls asleep on the drive home, and then he seemingly wakes up, and he's been dropped off to some sort of like secure facility by Matt, who tells him that he's had no other choice but to do it. And in his room, Kevin gets the National Geographic magazine from the previous episode slid under the door, and he starts to read it. And one of the staff comes in and basically just says to him, like, "Are you going to behave?" And I was thinking, like, you know, you'd think that the staff would be friendly, you know, from the outset, and someone like coming in like threatening, like, "Right, you're going to behave yourself." Like, all right, chill out. But he gets 10 minutes of TV time with Garvey Senior, who's had a bit of a trim.
Yeah, looking fresh.
Yeah, I did have my suspicions, but to be honest, I didn't think it was a dream sequence at first when it was unfolding. I thought it's fairly plausible that Matt would enter Kevin to a mental facility somewhat, although it's kind of against the covering up of the crime. But like the way they were handling him and the way they were treating him, I'm fairly certain they don't do that nowadays. So I did have my suspicions, but I wasn't sold until a little bit later, really, as the sequence plays out. You know, obviously you've got the National Geographic magazine that's in Kevin's subconscious. We know now he's dreaming about it, and with a bookmark on Cairo, and you know the way that elements of the episodes have been linking in with the magazine so far. So whether it be obviously the location, Cairo, whether it be Christine talking about the underwater spiders and other things as well. I know it's cheesy, I know we said it a lot, but I'm really interested to see where they go with it.
That's just like the motto of this whole podcast.
Yeah, that is the mantra, isn't it?
Really like it. It's absolutely brilliant. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Lettuce. Well, I thought I'd say, before he falls asleep, I like how on the radio you hear about is it AFTEC, is that the government agency, having a gunfight and someone doing a daring getaway. I like how just before he falls asleep, you hear about a gunfight with the government agency, and that someone's been wounded and has, you know, executed a daring escape just before he goes in. Now, when he wakes up outside the home, at first I was actually quite shocked. So I immediately didn't think it was a dream, just because I was like, oh wow, that's quite a pace change, because immediately out the car, you know, in kind of being processed by the asylum, the people there. And it wasn't till you get the shot where he's being dragged down the corridor that reminded me quite a lot of the shot you see with Garvey Senior in a previous episode, when Garvey Senior escapes from the prison, asylum, I'm not quite sure what to call it.
Secure facility.
Secure facility, thank you. And at that point I was like, oh, hang on, wait, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's when I started being suspicious of it being a dream. And then when the National Geographic got slid under the door, I was like, oh, right, yeah, okay, this isn't... that's the point where I was certain this isn't reality, this is just a dream. For those who couldn't guess, there was going to be one. So yes, that was my thoughts on that bit.
So, and then in the next bit, Kevin continues to insist, even though he's in this secure facility now and Matt's dropped him off there, that he isn't crazy. And so in the next bit, we see Kevin is talking to Garvey Sr. and Garvey Sr. is talking about how he's a bad man, and it's very reminiscent of the conversation that Kevin had with the woman that he slept with in the last episode, particularly when Garvey Sr. mentioned about his balls knowing that he's a bad man. What was it? His mind, body and balls, the Holy Trinity.
Yeah. yeah.
But Garvey Sr. says that everybody who didn't depart knows why they didn't, and I don't know, my inference from that is that because they're all bad people. And, only the good ones departed. But, obviously we know that doesn't seem to be true because we know about things that people who did departed, did for, like, Nora's husband. Yeah,
I found the change in scene quite jarring from the dank cell to the suddenly relatively comfortable surroundings, of being in the, I'm going to call like a recreational room or a TV room. So I found that quite jarring. And that's what reinforced that I don't think this is quite what we think it's going to be. Also, I noticed Garvey Sr. is wearing blue again. There's a lot of blue going on here, people.
Follow the blue. Notice the blue.
Yeah, exactly.
Blue's Clues.
Yeah. But yeah, but I did like that. And what I also tried to struggle, what confused me in this scene was. And that's why I certainly thought this must be from Kevin's perspective of the dream, because Garvey Sr. talks about how all the people left behind must be bad people. But actually, that's exactly the opposite that Matt's been saying, if that makes sense. Matt has been saying throughout, well, actually, the people who departed were bad people as well. Mm-hmm. So what Garvey Sr. is saying here doesn't make sense to what Matt's saying, and we know that Garvey Sr. supports Matt's message based on notes that we've seen, the money and things. So that's another thing that moment, oh, hang on, something's been misinterpreted here, or something's not right in this scene.
I mean, for all the confusing stuff in the leftovers, this whole dream sequence, particularly this scene and the next one that we'll talk about, it's really proper confusing.
yeah, exactly. So I thought it was quite interesting that's what. If Kevin's dreaming it, if that's what he thinks his dad thinks, despite the fact that as the audience we kind of know that's not quite what Garvey Sr. thinks or what Matt thinks either. So I thought it was quite interesting there.
So next, Garvey Sr. tells Kevin not to turn around, but of course he does, and he sees Patty there. What the fuck? Okay. And it seems that Patty's the person who Garvey Sr. has been talking to the whole time. As we've seen in previous episodes, him talking to someone who doesn't seem to be there, and because Garvey Sr. directly interacts with her as well as Kevin doing it. And Garvey Sr. says that he needs Kevin to stay. And Patty then kind of like straddles Kevin, really. And Garvey Sr. says, if you leave with her, then you leave with her. And Patty says to Kevin that they'll be, quote, travelling companions. And so what I took from this is that Garvey Sr.'s basically passing Patty on to Kevin, because he leaves and he says, oh, okay, if you leave with her, then you're leaving with her. I'm not leaving with her. And so he's passed her on to him, which obviously, isn't a very nice thing to do. But he did just tell Kevin he was a bad man.
Very true. I saw this more as if you leave with her, then you're taking the guilt of her with you. So I didn't see it so much as Garvey Sr. passing on I'm going to be talking to a third person in the room that no one else can see. But that's an interesting perspective, and I didn't pick it up like that. It was quite, considering at this point I thought it was Kevin's dream, like how uncomfortable Kevin felt about Patty's sexual advances, kind of straddling his lap, kissing him, and like how kind of that made him regress slightly instead of being like a man who's, going to hotel rooms with strange ladies to kind of regressing back to quite a childish attitude, as I think Ant's going to point out.
Sure, yeah. I mean, my take on this scene, I was a bit, how I like all the, the wider mythology and all that. Talking about leaving with her.
He likes a bit of that, doesn't he?
Oh,
everyone knows that about Ant. He likes a bit of the mythology.
Talking about leaving with her, I inferred a little bit, like, Patty's almost like the ferryman, like Charon or something. You know, like you leave with her, like it's almost like you're going to go down like a completely different path. Maybe you're going to die. Maybe you're going to embrace something. I'm not sure what that something is. So perhaps you could infer that. You know, definitely not as good of a travelling companion as Phil and I. You know, on our travels. You know,
Mapleton After Dark.
Yeah, I mean, Patty, the actress who played Patty, definitely would have enjoyed that scene for sure, wouldn't she? You know, getting on top of Kevin.
Yeah, and Sam would have.
But what I would say, and I suppose it's a slightly, I mean, I can see why they've done it. It's slightly frustrating, but typically when you dream, you don't act how you normally would act. But in all the dream sequences, Kevin basically acts how he would. So obviously it's to trick the viewer and think it's not a dream sequence. But when you kind of get the reveal at the end, and I understand they need to pull it in because, you know, it's all the symbolism and all the hidden meaning and all that kind of stuff. I do feel like I've just been shortchanged a little bit. So, you know, I thought, fuck me, another dream sequence. I'm just like, oh, come on.
Thing is, by the way, Ant, it's not your dream sequence, it's the Dean sequence.
Yeah, but my man's not in this one, so it's just a dream sequence.
Yeah, but we've got to think about my man at all times. Well, because we're friends. No, but it's always one of them with dream sequences in any type of medium, you know, books or anything. It's not about the obvious kind of like implications. It's usually something that on rewatch, or, you know, with your kind of prior knowledge or that kind of thing, you can make the inferences from, and then maybe read more into them from there. So I think as a first time watcher and only on season 1, let's not rip them apart too much.
No. You know, it's only a minor gripe. I mean, like, just a point that I forgot to make. It basically, you know, Kevin uses the word daddy, and it was kind of, I don't know if nice is the right word, to see him referring to him in that way, that childish kind of regression there, to see, like, exactly where his state of mind is right now.
Yeah, quite clearly feeling quite vulnerable, wasn't he? That was a good way of showing it there, with that regression.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, like there's something in this dream sequence that I just really wish we could fucking talk about, but we'll save it for a future episode because it's going to come back up. So I'm just like,
yeah.
So the other thing as well is after it's confirmed that it's a dream sequence as well. I like how Matt goes, you know, do you want a cheeseburger? Which we know that's how Garvey Sr. used to convince Kevin to go to church as a child. Like, you know, by bribing him with the offer of a cheeseburger.
That is well remembered, Phil.
Thank you.
More man.
Exactly.
Dean sequence confirmed, yeah. But so, in the diner, Matt's talking to Kevin and he wants to know what Patty said to him before she killed herself and to find out why she did it. Because mainly he wants to find out the Good Riddance cult's motive so he can help them. Again, that's the thing with Matt, you know, he's just helped cover up someone dying and, you know, at least a kidnapping and everything, but now he's on about helping people and stuff. He's so all over the place, his character sometimes. But Matt thinks that Kevin does actually understand what Patty insists she understands because, you know, if she was going to kill herself to get across the message, she'd have to be pretty confident that he does actually know what she's on about, so it's not just all wasted. And he's like, oh, actually, no, that was weird. Right, moving on. But Kevin thinks that it's all about the departure, and he admits to Matt that he wanted to leave his family before the departure happened, as we saw in the previous episode. And Matt insists to him that wanting and doing aren't the same, and Kevin then tells him about the other woman and about how she departed during.
Just before I come in with my main point, just to note, in the foreground of the shot, you've got 2 plates of food, which clearly represent the 2% of people who've disappeared.
What are you saying? That's not your main point. I thought that was your overarching theory of the whole.
You know
season.
what? It's just a bonus. It's just a real treat, limited edition.
I'm so
anyway,
glad you picked that up.
My 2 main points. I mean, I'm coming in with a hat trick here, and hat trick. I'll take the match ball line. So, I mean, for me, the fact that Kevin wanted to leave his whole family, it was like a whoa point for me. Because I can understand, you know, like people get divorced a lot, but it's very rare that people just kind of don't want anything to do with the kids. So maybe I'm inferring it a bit too strongly, like he wanted nothing to do with them. Maybe he just wanted to move out the house and visit them on a part-time basis. But for me, it was like a real kind of hard-hitting scene. Sure. And then, because it was so well acted, there isn't almost a lot to talk about, I feel. But I think it just kind of is what it is, isn't it? But for me, I think Matt is my favourite character. He's definitely the most interesting, I think. And you see that real contrast between the good and evil. I am slightly leaning towards the evil side. I mentioned it before. I think he's somewhat of a demonic kind of character. I know I've said that about 3 or 4 characters now, but
that's a recurring theme.
Scattergun approach, yeah. But it was really good for Matt to get that information out of Kevin.
Yeah. Every time Matt's on screen, it's always interesting, isn't it? There's never like a boring scene. You're like, all right, Matt, fucking move on, son. No, there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on with him, and there'll be lots of Matt discussions going forward. Don't you worry, my son. Oh. But so Kevin tells Matt about what he did next after the departure, in terms of driving to Jill and Tom's school and seeing their scared but happy faces because Kevin didn't depart. And he's breaking down as he's telling Matt this story. And again, like, the acting levels just absolutely like brilliant. Kevin says that he really wanted to be with his family at this point, but he could tell that things were just different for everybody. And at that point, he, started to lose them. And Matt says to him, look, it's not your fault. But Kevin says that it is. And, he's crying so much as he's saying it. And, because things were going badly even before the departure, as you saw last week. And again, I just want to make the point, Justin Theroux's performance, like, spot on.
Yeah, and how he sees his kids happy, obviously feels the guilt, and he feels guilty about his state of mind at that point. And obviously from what happens later in the episode and the heroism there, I thought it was a real nice dichotomy to make. Sorry, my throat went a bit then.
Yeah, you're right. What I liked here was that kind of when he starts explaining, kind of people kept asking for help and there was nothing that he could do. I quite like how you see that slightly later on in one of the closing scenes. You see a lot of people panicking and needing help, and he kind of actually takes control later on. But I'll talk about it later. But what I liked is his comment on just how he wants to be with them after talking about potentially leaving. Just kind of shows just how hard it must have been for him to lose his family. Kind of the way he kind of thought about leaving. Post departure, came to really appreciate them and the family that he has. And then he lost them anyway, but this time not by his own choice. And that's why I thought it really shows again how hard Kevin has been struggling throughout the whole series. I just helped explain just a little bit better as well.
I mean, it is that typical and like painful thing where, as you say, where he's thinking like, I'm not sure I want this, and then when something happens that makes you realise, oh, actually no, this is all that I want, but it's too late. Already at that point, it's too late. That's such good writing. So
yeah.
Shouts out to Damon Lindelof. I'm just shouting everyone out this episode. To be fair. But, so in the bathroom of the diner, this is a fucking weird scene. Like, I'm just going to say, just right at the top. Like, but in the bathroom of the diner, Kevin hears laughing coming from one of the cubicles, and he turns around and there's like fucking blood on the floor, and it turns out it's bloody Holy Wayne, who's been shot, I presume, or potentially stabbed, but I think it's shot. And Holy Wayne knows that he'll be dead in a minute, but he asks Kevin not to leave him alone and asks him also for another favour, and that favour's to make a wish. And Holy Wayne says that he thinks he might be a fraud, but if he's not, then he can make that wish come true, and it would mean that he's been real all along. And Kevin makes a silent wish, doesn't tell him what it is, and Holy Wayne just... The look on his face at this point, it's so... I actually can't think of how to describe it. The look that he has, and then when it goes into that big wide smile, and then he just says, granted. And then he dies, and again, brilliant scene of acting.
Yeah, it was such a powerful scene between them. I really like Holy Wayne and how he interacts with all the other characters. So you see him with Nora, and now with Kevin. I love it. It's pretty mad to see them interacting in those circumstances. Wayne did foresee his own death So whether he knew the time and place, or whether he just knew that, you know, the feds were onto him, you know, they really don't spell out if he's got powers or not, and if he's a fraud or not. I think there's an argument for both sides, which is interesting. And you know how I like my demons and all that. He looked, you know, with his facial expressions, quite demonic and otherworldly, in my opinion. I know he's dying of, you know, and he's in a lot of pain, and he's talking about, you know, something quite otherworldly. But you know, I thought he looks quite striking.
Yeah, definitely. Because on that point, if you was just talking to someone in conversation, then you looked up at them, and they was looking at you like that, you'd be like, "What is going on here?"
100%. Just make you think whether Wayne knew what the wish was, or whether he's blagging. Obviously, we see the change in circumstances for Kevin from the beginning and the end of the episode. So you think, you know, was his wish to reunite his family? I mean, it's a silent wish, so I guess we don't know.
Absolutely. So I like the fact that we've had your favourite adjective being chucked in again there, looking a bit demonic. But it's a good point that you've raised. I like how Wayne also wants a lot of this to be over and not feel guilty anymore. I liked how it kind of, for me, it felt the whole purpose of the scene was to kind of almost ask the audience, reaffirm the question the audience has been asking is, and that we've said several times. Is he a fraud? By Wayne himself asking the question. I hope I'm not, but I think I am. And I think he is a fraud. I think he's him. Things like saying he can foresee his own death. Well, kind of everyone knows they're going to die. No one's yet proved to be immortal. So I always find what he says to be very
yet.
Well, you know, I can live. I've not died yet, so you know, still holding out for it. But I do think he's a fraud, and I think that kind of, when Kevin makes the wish, I suspect it's probably like what everyone else has kind of wished for, you know, up to this point. You know, they've either wished for all of this to be over or to not feel guilty anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Wayne knows he's going to die, so he won't see Kevin's reaction, and you'll never know if the wish has been fulfilled or not. I mean, there is an argument to say, yeah, who's a fraud, who's blagging all along. What I probably will say, we know that Nora for a period of time did feel better, so whether it's a placebo or not, we don't know. However, at the end of the episode, we do know that she's not fully okay. So whether Holy Wayne did heal,
yeah, be respectful, Anne. Come on.
whether he did heal Nora or not, we don't know. But you know, if he did, then she obviously developed kind of new pain, if that makes sense. You know, so it's like the slate was wiped clean, and then she's got more bad feelings, or whether he's just a fraud from the off. We don't know. I like how he's got a touch of the Melisandre of Game of Thrones about him. I think, like, my personal take is he has got powers, but he doesn't really know the extent of them, and they're a bit kind of hit and miss, I think.
With Melisandre, she does have powers, but she adds to it with the charlatanism. But with Holy Wayne, we haven't actually seen anything to suggest that he does have powers. Because, like, when you're saying about did he heal Nora, she pretty much spells out at the end of this that, like, she thought she was, but she's not really.
Yeah, but that shows did he heal her, and she just developed new pain. I mean, the governor at the start, or the senator, he reckoned he was feeling good. He's obviously got a lot of people bought into it. I think it's not on the nose enough, Sam. I think it. I think
it's very on the nose that he's looking a bit demonic.
I think there's an argument either way, but just because of everything else I've seen throughout the series, whether it be the traffic lights with Matt's episode and lots of the other kind of strange things, I'm in camp. Wayne has powers.
Well, I think he's such a confusing character, isn't he? And like, one thing that I'd like to do is, and after we've finished season 3 of this, is to do an episode where it's just like a theories episode. So we'll either talk about our own, or we'll load up the Reddit of the episode discussions, or that kind of thing, and just talk through like some ideas that people have.
Yeah.
And to see where everyone else kind of comes down on him. But
and
obviously
maybe
Sorry, go
on. So maybe that's something we can ask the audience, people listening in, to kind of write in to say what they think. Because I'm on the other side of that, and I think he is a fraud. for quite a few reasons. But you're right, I'm not 100% sold. There's still that chance he's not a fraud.
And that is just... I say this literally every week, but that is the brilliance of this programme. Either answer is feasible here, and you're not making that many kind of leaps with it. So I think just an episode purely about theory kind of discussion that would satisfy me, maybe not anyone else, but
I mean, it's possible he's both. It's possible he's both. It's possible he does have some powers and he has done some things, but also he's claimed to do other things and they haven't turned out. So, like I say, it's a bit hit and miss. Like if he's trying to light the trenches, he has to say, 5 or 6 times before it actually happens. That's a GOT reference, but, I guess we'll never know, will we?
Oh.
I can't wait to see what happens next. So next, the police come fucking busting into the bathroom and they talk to Kevin about Holy Wayne afterwards. They've probably ascertained that, he's not murdered him. A couple of weird things. They ask if he made any physical contact with him, so obviously they've heard the rumours. Then they ask if Holy Wayne talked to him about Russia. Fucking that seems right out of left field. But the cop's satisfied that Kevin doesn't have anything to offer, so he tells him to go on home back to Mapleton.
Yeah, I mean, Russia hasn't been mentioned thus far, so it makes you think, has he got connections there? Is there something else that's kind of separate going on in Russia? Are we going to see more of it? Am I wasting my time asking the questions? I don't know. But obviously there are no, at least rumours about the extent of his powers, hence the question. So I think they are taking the threat seriously, somewhat, which makes maybe even the police, unsure.
Yeah, I got the impression, when they're asking, like, did he talk about Russia? I was a bit like, that seems really left field. We've not really heard anything about Russia as far as I'm aware. We've seen other random conspiracy theories about, like Rome and other places, but I don't recall Russia being mentioned yet. I don't know if it will be mentioned, but yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if they do continue that storyline, or if it's more just showing that the anti-cult department have no idea what's going on in general and just asking all sorts of random questions. I wasn't quite clear. Yeah, the other thing as well is I love at the end of the scene, kind of where he says, "Go home to Mapleton." There's that sudden upbeat change in music, if that makes sense. Like it becomes, the first opening bars are quite, considering before we've had things like Nothing Else Matters, like an instrumental version, the music suddenly seemed like a lot more upbeat and instrumental, reminded of I'm trying to think of a song that's comparable to, but it just seemed very cheerful, upbeat, and kind of almost as if
it's like the calm before the storm.
Yeah, exactly that. Because potentially Holy Wayne's healed him of his problems. Matt's tried to help him.
Everything's good in the world.
He's got past the police, because I think there's a moment where he might be concerned that the police might have an idea of what's happened to Patty. Because even Matt runs over, going, he's done nothing wrong, as if kind of almost anticipating Patty's being found or something. So that's suddenly like, go on home to Mapleton. Positive music kicks in. It almost felt like an indication of how Kevin's feeling, a lot better prior to coming home.
And that's it. And I think it's an indication of, that when he gets back to Mapleton, everything's going to be really happy, everything's going to be going really well. So let's check in back at Mapleton. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Right, okay, yeah, things have gone really fucking south. We see Sam's mom, Sam being the baby from the pilot episode, try and shoot one of the Guilty Remnant members. And she shows Kevin just exactly what the Guilty Remnant have done with all those dolls that they've bought. And we see 2 Guilty Remnant members, including Meg. They've been badly beaten and tied to a lamppost. And Meg just says, yeah, they've made everyone remember.
Yeah. I don't think the showrunners could have done a better job of literally showing things going to hell. Especially, as I said a minute ago, everything was looking fine. And now we've got riots, gunshots, people being beaten up at lampposts, dead bodies, things burning. So there couldn't be a more literal, and here's things going to hell.
I mean, anyone with even even a casual viewer will know that things were going to kick off big time, especially in America where everyone's got guns. The GI are going to be hunted like dogs, aren't they?
Everyone's strapped.
Well, you know what I mean. It's easy to get them. I'm not sure about the carry laws in New York, but What I will say is that Kevin has got an inroad, knowing that the GR want to go out like martyrs, so he will kind of know that this is sort of what they want, and they're still not going to comply. So when Meg has been beaten up, she's not like, oh my god, like, you know, I nearly died, or people are being murdered, and, you know, everything's on fire. It's kind of like, yeah, we are achieving what we wanted to achieve. So Kevin almost knows, like, not to focus on the GR too much, I guess, in that situation. Not to not save them, but more of a kind of this is what they want, you know.
Well, that's it. He says to Matt, doesn't he, that, you know, they wanted to be beat up or something. I can't remember if it's that exact phrase, but he says something along those lines, doesn't he? Or like, you know, they want a reaction. Kevin knows exactly why they're doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think, as we've discussed in previous episodes, it's kind of to push people to the breaking point. So then once they break, they might then join them, I think, is the best way just to sum it up.
Yeah, it's how they recruit.
So the whole town is like really, really kicking off now, and they're literally just battering the Guilty Remnant members just all over the place. And the Guilty Remnant houses have been like arson attacked. And Dennis says that nobody wants to help them because Kevin's questioning where the fire department are. And basically the answer is, yeah, they don't care what's going on. And loads of people are like burning their dolls. We see the couple whose son had Down syndrome putting their doll of him in there, and yeah, I don't know, it's still just so horrible to think about that. But we see Laurie getting pulled from one of the Guilty Remnant houses, and Kevin kind of goes and grabs her, and she screams to him that Jill's inside, so obviously Kevin just runs straight in. And interestingly enough, we actually see one, because we've seen someone meditating earlier in the episode. It looks like there's just one of the Guilty Remnant members just meditating in the flames.
Yeah, I mean, like, I did have to laugh when I saw that. And obviously there is the parallel there. I'm not quite sure what the link is. They're obviously not the same person. I just thought it's just someone who's just got his own kind of beliefs on top of the GR, and he's just willing to burn to death for the cause. That's how I interpreted it. But, you know, like, the GR, they can't have it all. Laurie comes out, you know, nearly, you know, like, dead, like lungs full of smoke, and then she starts talking. I'm a hypocrite, innit?
It's a going through the points there. You're right. When I see the person meditating, the first thing I thought about wasn't so much the other person you see meditating in the blue field, but I was thinking about the post you see in like the opening scene of the GR in the first episode, where it says, "We smoke not for pleasure, but to prove our faith." And I was there like, well, my man is definitely going to be demonstrating that in a second.
Full marks from my man.
Yeah, that was that. So I kind of, as awful as it sounds, I did have a little chuckle there.
Mate, there's no question. We can question Laurie's commitment. No question in my man.
Yeah,
he's the model candidate.
Yes.
Employee of the week.
Exactly. But coming back down to Earth, I mean, you're right. I think it's the first time.
Sorry, I'm laughing at employee of the week.
Cult member of the week.
So Laurie, you've been a bit, you know, kind of like on the fence. You know, you've been turning up at the houses. You know, you've been going to the motel with Patty and having the, you know, the all day breakfast. It's all a bit kind of like hit and miss. Look at my man.
You've helped organise this Memorial Day, you know, expose what we're going to do, but we know you got that lighter. Look at my man. No lighters for my man.
Complete commitment.
Sorry, Phil. Please do make your original point.
What I do have to say is, though, that the moment you see the couple, you know, putting the effigy of their Down syndrome son into the flames, like, for me, that was hard. That was actually quite hard to watch that scene.
Yeah.
Because, like, it almost takes you right back to what happened with Nora, and so you really get the emotion. I think it's also the first time you hear Laurie speak other than the previous episode, so it's I think actually warning Kevin that Jill's still inside is the first time we hear her speak.
Yeah, that's right.
Outside of, so it kind of shows. Is it them trying to show just how important Jill is to Laurie still?
Well, yeah. Like, she's nearly died herself. Her daughter's gonna die. I think it's just like, just go save her.
Yeah.
We'll worry about the fact I spoke later. I mean, she's probably thinking that, you know,
Who's
all the houses.
Answer to?
Yeah, exactly. She's the leader. All the houses are burning down. Loads of people are already dead. The GR's in ruins. I think we'll let that word slip. You know, but it's not quite the commitment level we're looking for, yeah.
What was
Fucking hell.
I know, right? What was good was the initial utter bewilderment on Kevin's face when he first turns up at the scene. And, you know, that kind of, you can just see him, like, looking at things burning, people being beaten up, the police not doing anything. And it kind of felt back, you know, when he talks about earlier, when when the first departure happened, him saying, people kept coming to me for help and there was nothing I could do. This felt like a very... That felt like that's initially how he felt for a moment, that complete bewilderment was happening, and then suddenly kicks in, you know, Dennis, you hold the line, you stay here, you get those cars moved out the way, suddenly taking control and actually trying to help people and actually doing something. So it felt quite, I don't know, considering how he talks, how he felt after the initial departure, this felt like a completely different Kevin, taking control, helping people, giving instructions, and actually kind of doing his job as, you know, chief of police. So it felt like quite a good comparison to who he thought he was immediately after the initial departure.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the first time you really see him do kind of like a pretty flawless job, don't you?
Exactly. What I also had to laugh again, considering how serious this scene is, there's a couple of things that have made me laugh. But you know when Kevin he sees the person, the martyr on the floor. Meditating. He then sees a GR member being attacked by someone else, and he kind of he fights off the other person and pushes the GR member out the way. Did you see what was written on the board where the two people are fighting behind them?
No.
So it actually says in the corner, I can't remember if it says vital or important information, and has the local fire department's number written. So it actually has Mapleton Fire Department.
They could never call it because they can't speak.
And that's the other thing that made me laugh, is the fact that they've written a phone number on there, but they can't communicate with them. What they do, send them a text message.
Mate, you see, this is Laurie's leadership. She's not focused. Hand the reins over to my man. He will do a good job.
But it just really made me, again, how serious the scene was. It was just one of those like little. It just felt like a little nugget of kind of other people. Yeah, just kind of chipping in here. Here's the local fire department's number as the house is burning, but no one could communicate with them. As we see from the martyr over there, we shouldn't ever really need to contact them anyway because we know where everyone's going. So it's
should lead by example and follow my man to the flames.
yeah. That's how it felt.
Fuck yeah. Yeah. That's I didn't notice that, and it does make you think like, why was that on there?
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those.
Or is that for the ones who haven't quite passed the induction yet and they can still talk?
Possibly, but there's not many
that's
other
the serious
non-inducted. Yeah, but that's not the answer I want to go with. I want Laurie's incompetence. That's what I'm sticking to here.
It's both.
But so in the burning house, Kevin actually manages to find Jill, and he does get her out. So fair play to him for that.
I fully thought he was going to lose her. Going into that scene, I genuinely thought he was actually going to lose Jill. I didn't think Jill was going to... He either wasn't going to find her or she wasn't going to make it.
Nah, this show's all about happy endings, mate. I knew he'd get her out.
That's true, yeah. There's nothing but happy, good things happen here.
I feel really proud, you know, of Kevin in a way, because he's the main character. And he's done a lot of bad things, and, you know... The way his character's going, you do feel sorry for him a little bit. I know he's not flawless, but the fact he gets her out in front of, you know, his ex-wife, and I thought, you know, fair play to my man. You know, the all-American going in and, you know, saving the day.
It's definitely the closest to protagonist that Kevin seems to have gotten so far. You know, doing something genuinely quite heroic and everything.
Yeah, completely selfless.
I mean, he's just a proper great character, isn't he? Like there's so many things to talk about with him that would be a whole episode in itself. Is Kevin a good person? That's another one for post season 3, the end game content. So going from the chaos of the attack and the burning house, we then see what's presumably a flashback of Nora, and she's sitting with the dolls in a family, and there's quite a few good seconds of silence, like I say, after the chaos of before, and she starts to write a note to Kevin saying goodbye. And she says that she cares about him and that he was good to her, and at times she even remembered who she was before everything changed. And whilst this is going on, we see that some guilty remnant members have actually been killed because there's a coroner there during the aftermath. And Nora says that she was pretending that she hadn't lost everything. So this is why, earlier when we were saying about Holy Wayne, like, did he actually temporarily heal her? I don't think so. 'Cause she says, like, I was just pretending. She wanted to believe it. It is that kind of placebo thing for me, and she's kind of over the effects of that now. And, she says that she wants to believe that things can go back to normal and that she isn't, quote, surrounded by the abandoned ruin of a dead civilization. Oh, fuck you. All right, fuck you. Let's not get too deep.
Yeah. When the scene was unfolding, because obviously it's Nora's note. She's the narrator, but they have lots of shots of Laurie and there's certain things that are said, and you could definitely see the link between the two, and definitely they find themselves in fairly similar circumstances on certain aspects. And then I thought, is it like, I kind of feared the worst, is it like a suicide note, and not just a goodbye note, if you like? I did kind of think the worst.
No, exactly, because the way you see her when they first open the scene, still stroking her children's hands up with like quite an affectionate manner, and then when she starts talking about kind of, she remembers who she was, but she was pretending. I also thought this was going to be a suicide note. Do we know? Because I'm assuming everyone who's listening to this podcast know how's the scene end. Do we actually know if it was a suicide note or if it was actually that she was just leaving?
Well, she's packing a suitcase, so she's just
packing
leaving.
the car. Isn't she?
I don't think you pack a suitcase if you're just going to end it all.
Well, that's a good point, well made. Okay, fair enough.
But I guess you could go away for a small period of time and then do it. That's not beyond the realms of possibility, but yeah, it's it's a going away note, isn't it?
That's pure conjecture, fam. But
I know.
This entire show is pure conjecture at this point.
Sam is conjecture.
True. Yeah, my life is just pure conjecture. Anyway,
is he really Sam or is he pastry? What's the?
I am a dichotomy. I am Sam and I am pastry, all in one. He is I and I am him.
It's like Kevin. You got Kevin, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and then you got Mr. Sam and Dr. Pastry.
It's Dr. Pastry.
I was going to say, he's the professional here.
Oh, fucking hell. Right, let's move on now. So, Nora also says that she wants to believe that it's still possible to get close to someone, but it's just easier not to, and she says that she's a coward because she just won't be able to take that pain again. Oh, that's proper deep, man. That's proper deep. Come on. It's not a light watch, this, is it? But as like during Nora's kind of voiceover, we see Laurie and Kevin exchange a look when Kevin's kind of making sure Jill's all right. And it's quite a long look and there's quite a lot going on. So, again, I think this might be for the last time. I want to know what you guys think that look was saying between Laurie and Kevin. I'll give my opinion first on this one. That I think that Kevin was... He looked angry. He looked pissed off. That's probably a minor way of putting it after his daughter nearly died. But I think his look was saying something like, are you happy now? To Laurie, or, something along those lines. But then he did look hurt again. As she walked away, he might have been hoping that she'll, come to him and talk to him. The fact that she walked away, again, as he would perceive, she walked away from him. Sorry, before. Yeah, there's a lot going on just in that look.
Yeah, for a moment I thought they were going to get back together. That's initially what I saw. Because I know you see the anger in Kevin's face. I semi-expected Laurie to almost break from her GR silence and kind of come over to them and talk to them. But when she walks off, it's quite that almost... It looked to me like a look of loss, longing that he wished she wouldn't have just walked away and that she would have come and spoken to them. Or if they even just had the argument. It was quite a powerful look. And again, fantastically acted.
Yeah, we know about Laurie's conflict, so it's probably a bit of that as well. The ex-husband has just gone in and saved the daughter, and then with everything going on with the GR, it's not going well, is it? So, yeah, Laurie probably feels like some connection to Kevin that's stronger than she probably wants to believe. But Kevin's he's not there to to get back with her at this moment in time, is he? He's got Nora. His daughter's nearly died. He risks his own life. City's on fire. She's shit stirring. Like, you know, just move on. What have you done?
What have you done, Laurie? What have you done? But so Nora then puts the dolls of her kids into bed, and we see, as we've said, that she's fully packed up and ready to go. And she says, and this is in her note to Kevin still, she says that she's accepted the truth, that there is no going back, and that she's just beyond repair. So Nora then puts the dolls of her kids into bed, and we see, as we've said, that she's fully packed up and ready to go. And she says, obviously this is still in the note to Kevin, but she says that she's accepted the truth, that there is no going back, and that she's just beyond repair.
It's a bit like an addiction relapse, isn't it? Like, the dolls were definitely her trigger. You know, she obviously was making good progress after like 3 years, is it? But, you know, that definitely sent her over the edge. There is a parallel you could probably make between the fact that the blonde guy who was hitting on Nora at her conference party, you know, saying that, you know, by burying the dolls, it gives people closure. And, you know, Nora was kind of questioning, wasn't she? Like, why would people want to spend all this money just to bury the doll? And then it's interesting that the fact that, you know, with these black market dolls that were smuggled into a house, you know, for to cause distress, I guess, you know, the fact that her putting them to bed, that's her way of saying bye. So, you know, I think she was a skeptic, obviously, but now it's interesting to see that she felt the need to do that. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, I'm sure the three of us on the podcast now, if the same thing happened to you, it's weird, isn't it? Like, I know, try and put yourself in that situation. I know it's hard to imagine, but you probably wouldn't just kind of like take it and like put it in the recycling or in the bin or something. I think a lot of people probably would maybe touch it or look at it or do something with it in that way.
Well, we see quite a few different reactions, I think, as the riot's going on, because quite a lot of people are burning them, quite a lot of people are attacking them. I think we do see some people, you know, cradling them or looking like they're putting them in cars or, you know, doing something with them. There's lots of conflicting kind of reactions that you can see, I think, if you was to rewatch it.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people probably would have had an initial, well, it's that anger and that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there would be. I think there's quite a variety of, as Sam said, of reactions to it. Some people burn them, some people cradle them, some people put them to bed, and it's quite a good range because I think everyone will deal with the situation slightly differently. So for some people, it might actually help. Like, maybe it does help Nora move on in an odd way.
Well, hopefully nobody knows about, you know, this service beforehand, because they'll look at their dolls and they'll be like, hold on. This is the knockoff one, isn't it? You could have at least, if you wanted to make the point, you could have at least got the, you know, the elite level lifelike dolls.
Is this the knockoff Barb? This is like the baby doll we see in the Christmas episode.
The baby Jesus.
Baby Jesus, that's it, and it's like quite like a knockoff brand kind of $4.99. Yeah, like a basic model. Yeah.
It makes you think, actually, like, you know, the proper professional doll company, there must be some sort of like application process where you have to prove that, you know, like you're related to the departed. You can't just put in a bulk order for loads of people, so that's why they had to go with the black market. I don't know, something to think about.
Potentially. Do you reckon that baby Jesus, you know, him buying an imposter replacement baby Jesus again, is now a weird foreshadowing of what will happen later on?
I think there's a loose link, perhaps, but
yeah, it definitely seems to link in. Yeah, but it's not any
the theme is there,
that anyone could ever pick up. But you take that with everything else, and you might think, oh, okay, yeah, like you say, the theme is there.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a 2020 hindsight thing. It's not, you'd never pick up what was going to happen from that, but now you watch back. It makes sense, if that makes sense. So whilst Nora's still talking, is still giving the kind of narrating it, you know, reading out her letter to Kevin, you see Laurie walking around, and she looks at the statue from the first episode, you know, the one with the baby and the mother like losing the baby to the departure,
Yeah.
Now, this might sound like a humble brag, but I think I actually called it back then and asked the question if Laurie lost a child or a baby. We'd have to re-listen to it, but I'm fairly sure I asked this question in that episode. So
We're going to have to go back.
Did you specifically link it to Laurie?
I think I did, yes.
Oh. Well, if he did, then that is the meatiest, juiciest point
that is
made on the whole
so
podcast.
That's like a Kobe beef.
That was
like,
a humble, just a humble brag there. But anyway,
like them videos where it's like, we ate a $12,000 steak sandwich. That's that fun.
Yeah.
But
I'd never spend that much money on a sandwich. But but I do like that. Her looking up at that statue is very clear. Her reflecting back on the child that she's lost.
Yeah, that it hurts to watch that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's quite like, oof.
So many things in this program. I do love it, but you're like, oh.
It's my emotions.
Let's just put The Office on or something.
Oh, I did. I genuinely. I think didn't I message you say that I had to go watch an episode of The Office just to kind of.
You need a little pick me up. And then something else really, just to reinforce the jovial nature of this program, we then see Laura and she's staring out into the sea, and is she potentially contemplating walking into it and committing suicide? Well, maybe. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise you. But Tom actually then pulls up, and then we see Kevin and Jill holding hands as they're walking down the street, and then the dog that Jill set free that Kevin, was trying to tame as part of his bet with Dean. It then comes up to him, and Kevin embraces the dog. And I think, given what we've discussed in previous episodes about the dog, I think it's quite interesting what that would seem to suggest.
So, what do you think it suggests, Sam? Because from my point of view, it's that Kevin has almost got rid of the kind of rabid. Black dog, like the weight off his shoulders, and he was a bit jumpy at first, but he's embracing it part of the family, like he's moved on somewhat. What's your take?
Well, I think for me, and obviously I have to walk that balancing act between giving away anything in the future, but I think for me, as we've discussed before, the dog seemed to have an influence on Kevin, trying to push him towards that Garvey Senior / maybe a bit supernatural National Geographic kind of side of the story. And that's always what I kept thinking about with the dog. And, there's always strange things going on there, and it's pushing Kevin towards that. And so now when the dog comes up to him and he embraces it, that maybe he's kind of embracing that side of things.
That's how I took it. I took it as him embracing that side of himself, that kind of his understanding. He's not perfect, or potentially the depression, or I took it as him finding some kind of solace or peace in his own mind, and that's just like a very visual representation of it. Before Kevin has been flustered, he's been angry, he's been depressed, he's gone through a whole range of emotions, and the dog's always kind of reflected that. The dog barking, not letting Kevin anywhere near him, other than Jill, where he does allow Jill to come near him. So I saw when he kind of embraces the dog, him just kind of becoming accepting of himself is how that's how I perceived it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's fairly similar to what I said, to be fair. It's definitely. There's definitely the theme of, embracing something there.
Did it seem a bit like... So, this is to cut across, but the way he kind of played with the dog, it kind of struck me with, in the opening scene of the... not the opening scene, but the first time you see Kevin running with his massive package, when he plays with the dog. So the dog comes over and he strokes at the dog. And it kind of felt very... I was trying to kind of make a bit of a link between those two things, actually.
Maybe,
before the dog gets shot.
It's similar imagery, isn't it? Kevin was a bit jumpy at first with the dog, and then he goes to play with it in the in this episode. I'm not sure. It's one of them, Phil. I'm not sure what the link is, but there's similar imagery, isn't it?
And something else I want to kind of mention there as well. Sorry, I know you've got other points to talk about, but so in the opening scene, Kevin's wearing grey. He's wearing that grey running suit, grey tracksuit, sweatsuit, whatever you want to call it. And I'm almost wondering.
How could I forget?
I know, it's hard to not think about it. It's hard to even notice what colour his clothes were, to be honest. But
I'll just be there at work, trying to focus on office copies, and I'll just have a vision.
Doodling it out anyway. But I was kind of wondering if in the opening he's wearing a grey tracksuit, and I was having wondered, as we've talked about the morality of Kevin now, if that kind of grey tracksuit was a bit of a way of showing he's morally he's a bit of an ambiguous character. He's morally grey, he's not perfect. But if you see Kevin in this scene, he's wearing a white t-shirt that's been stained black with soot, but it's still like quite a strong mixture of white and black. And again,
mate, that is a meaty point.
And I'm trying to see if that's a reflection of how we saw him at the first scene, but actually a bit of a clearer. He's done some good things, done some bad things.
So he's still grey, but he's less grey than before.
A little bit,
but with a bit more black. I don't know.
No. He's a bit more. So you've got some very strong good actions that he's done, some very strong bad actions that he's done, but combined, it's still a bit grey. And that's what I'm kind of going to. Is actually he's still the same person he was in the opening scene. Still morally ambiguous, but we understand those peaks and troughs of his actions.
So you'd say you'd say at his core, at his base, he's a white t-shirt. He's a good guy, but he's just done a lot of bad things. He's not fundamentally a bad person. So he's still morally ambiguous, but at his core, he's a stained white t-shirt rather than a black t-shirt with white specks.
Yes, that's one way. That's one way of looking about it. Yes.
Well, do you know what this reminds me of? I know we've mentioned Melisandre already in this episode, but when she's talking to Davos and she says, if an onion's half with rot, it's a rotten onion, and you throw it away. And it does make you think that, because if someone does have genuine good points about them, but then there is quite a lot of bad as well, does that make them a bad person? I don't know. I think that's above my pay grade.
So are we now stumbling onto the duality of man, and then should we just leave it there?
Moving the topic on slightly. Do you think it was a coincidence that Tommy and Laurie met at that spot? Was that their place? Do you think they communicated prior? I never got the impression she was going to commit suicide. I thought she was more just reflecting. But the fact that Tommy turns up there having already left the baby off. I don't know. What's your take on that, Sam?
I think coincidence. I can't imagine Laurie's got a phone in her pocket, or she might do, to be fair. But I think coincidence, because she looks surprised when she sees him, and I mean that's it really. I haven't really got too many thoughts apart from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next Nora says that she needs to go away and that she needs to start working towards something. She doesn't know what, but she also mentions that she's worried she'll forget her family as well, which, I don't know, even just that one little sentence is just pretty tough to even think about. Are you allowed to go on then and be happy, and you feel guilty because you feel like you're forgetting them? They don't even bear thinking about. But so Nori goes to deliver the letter to Kevin, but she finds Christine's baby on the doorstep, and Jill and Kevin kind of arrive home with the dog, and they all look quite happy in that moment. Nora's smiling at Kevin, Kevin's smiling, even Jill looks like she's smiling. And again, on the surface, this is going back to what we spoke about quite a lot last week. On the surface, they all look happy, and you think, okay, there could be a good future for these guys, but we know what's going on underneath that kind of surface happiness. We know that Nora has literally got a note explaining to Kevin about why she's broken and needs to go, and she's not going to give it to Kevin now. You would think. We know that Jill went to go join the Guilty Remnant, and all that stuff that happened with Amy a few episodes ago, and we can see that Kevin seems to have embraced this dog and everything that seems to go with it. So, if you think that this is a happily ever after scenario, then you might be a little bit disappointed in that.
I don't know, now. Sam. I don't know. I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
2 seasons to go. I think this is it now.
I'm optimistic.
The remaining episodes are just going to be them talking about, no, I want a Chinese, no, I want an Indian.
That's it. It's 18 episodes of just pure happiness and
domestic bliss. Yeah.
It's their wedding episode.
Yeah. So, just to bring it back down to our level. So Tom left the baby with Kevin. Obviously, he didn't know that Nora was going to get to it first, if you like. I don't think he even knows that Kevin's with Nora, right?
Sorry, do you mean Tom doesn't know? Sorry,
that's what I meant. Yeah. So Tom doesn't know that Kevin's with Nora.
No, he'd have no inkling.
So he left the baby with Kevin, knowing he'd be the best person to look after it. What's your take on that? Both.
Well, he's got no other option, has he? Really, unless he was just to put the baby into the system, if you like, with the adoption agencies and stuff. Like, I don't know. Like, you would think that. Well, I don't. This is the thing with Kevin. I almost said then, oh yeah, but Tom might think that Kevin's a good dad. And we've seen Kevin be a good dad, but obviously, literally, he's admitted earlier on that he wanted to abandon his family before.
Yeah.
Like,
do you think there's something here about this is the second time that baby has been abandoned, which is rough on that baby. But also, I was kind of thinking about as well, Tom's now done exactly what his dad has done and abandoned him, if that makes sense. Like, he's abandoned this baby.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Michael, his dad, abandoned Tom. So I wonder if there's like a bit of a full circle and left it with Kevin to raise and bring up.
Yeah. So we know from the episode titled The BJ and the AC that we think AC stands for Antichrist, and obviously it's the episode we find out Christine's pregnant, and some things we've seen before, whether it be the guy in the I think it's a homeless shelter of sorts, talking about how Christine's baby is the devil, and there's been lots of other things like that. And you think, well, the baby has been abandoned twice, like you say, Phil. Like, is that the kind of, like, I don't know, the universe saying that this baby, I know it's a bit of a stretch, I feel almost bad saying it, but should this baby not be raised? Should this baby be abandoned? Is it
cursed?
A bit demonic.
Oh,
poor kid, eh? It's been abandoned twice, and Ant's there like, does it deserve it?
Slagging it off. Yeah, slagging it off.
But I'm just saying, like, from what we
slacking it off.
I mean, no. From what we've seen, whether it be Christine quoting the National Geographic magazine and
I know why you're saying it, but just out of context. It's like,
Please don't crop that and put it on live.
It's the second time this baby's been abandoned. Is that the universe saying it doesn't deserve to be raised?
Anyway, I think that Jill will abandon the GR. That's just my slightly early prediction. I mean, she's had one hell of an induction week, hasn't she?
yeah, I was going to say.
I think it's like day one, isn't it?
Yeah,
still?
I was going to say, it's still the day one for Jill.
And I do think that the baby will give Nora the purpose that she needs to get back on track. Again, an early prediction, but Kevin's got his family back. It's all good now.
Yeah, it did seem quite as they're kind of panning out, seemed like quite an odd, weird family setup, doesn't it? 2 kids, a dog, Nora standing there smiling. It did feel quite a happy family, almost, in a very strange way.
That's it. I'm sure there's nothing but good going forward for these guys.
And so if we don't watch the second season or the third, then good things, yeah?
Yeah, we should just end it there.
Yeah, optimists end here.
Phil's AU.
Sorry, and then also talking about Kevin and his happy family setup, 2 kids and a dog. That's a dog that Kevin didn't want a dog, is what we see in the previous episode. So now, but he seems to quite embrace this dog, if that makes sense. It's quite a not quite sure what the word is, but quite a character change in him. If he said actually I want this dog, compared to the one he didn't want with Laurie.
Quite a big turnaround,
yeah.
But so there's a lot to definitely think about as we come to the end of the synopsis for this episode, and obviously season 1 as a whole now. So as ever, we'll just close out the episode with just our few little closing thoughts, and I'll go first, and I will keep it brief because we've talked in a lot of detail about a lot of stuff this episode. So thank you for sticking with us as always. But I just want to say that I think this is honestly just a truly special episode. Like, the writing levels, the acting levels, loads of plot points coming together, some things getting resolved, but then still setting up lots of mysteries and setting up plot points going forward. It's just absolutely fantastic, and I just want to say I just cannot wait to see what happens next.
Oh dear. I love the whole episode. Slight gripe, humans tend to focus on the negatives, but I'm really not bothered about the dream sequence that we saw. It was a bit too on the nose for me.
It was on the button.
Yeah, I can appreciate them needing it for plot, and I'm sure there'll be stuff, in 7 episodes' time we go, oh, do you remember that? But at the time, I do feel a little bit shortchanged, but yeah, for in the grand scheme of things, like Sam say, a fantastic episode.
Yeah, I completely agree on that point. I didn't understand at the time how it progresses the plot, but I think Sam has alluded to something else that we're going to pick up later on. So I'm now going to have to pay a bit more attention to that scene. I might rewatch because I didn't really enjoy it the first time. It felt a bit too on the button.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? All the GR members are. I mean, this is another controversial one. Please don't quote me. But I'm kind of happy that the GR got destroyed. Because they are just troublemakers, basically, aren't they? They don't have any redeeming qualities. I know they want people to remember, but they don't half go about it in like the most fucked up ways possible. And I know people are getting murdered and the place is burning down, but I never really felt bad for them at any stage.
I don't think it's going to be the end of the GR, because we know there are other sects of the GR. We see that in Tom's episode. We see GR members in. Yeah,
I agree. I don't think it's the end. It's not the end, is it? It's not the end, but they've definitely taken a hit. They've taken a hit, haven't they?
This local branch has, yeah.
Yeah, and there's similar cults, I think.
The thing is, like, what we've been saying about the GR, like, this is what they wanted. They know that this is the reaction that they want to have. They're trying to break not just individuals now. They're trying to break the whole town. Do you know what I mean? Make it seem like hell, break everyone, and then the aftermath of that, when people do feel a bit more broken, is when they'll try and,
Yeah, recruit them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I do quite like the idea, if they are broken and gone now, then good riddance to them.
It does seem as well, like, if your recruitment strategy is literally like set the city on fire, set the town on fire, we're going to lose several members, but we'll recruit free. It's like, it seems a bit counterintuitive, because you're just going to fill the head count that you've lost.
Well, I mean, you've got to replace more of, my man, the martyr, the dedicated. You're not going to find many of him. It's going to take a town to get another one of those.
Irreplaceable.
Yeah.
But, with Laurie being served that, cold dish of revenge, basically, because the plan did work. So, the operation was a success, but, clearly with the daughter nearly dying, she nearly dying, you do think that she's going to leave, and that leaves a spot open, obviously, with Patty dead, and I personally think that's going to be Meg. You've seen her come across quite strong, advocating violence. Phil was talking about the similar notepads or clipboards. I think they're going that way. I can't see Laurie kind of like coming up with the plans of being the de facto leader anymore. Just a note on the title of the episode. I've actually thought he could refer to 4 different people. It could be Kevin returning to the care home, which he always needs to go back to because of his dad. It could be Holy Wayne. It could be Christine's child, or it could be Tommy returning. I mean, dissect that.
True. I always interpreted it purely as being either Tom's return, but Tom doesn't really return because we don't see him in the final scene, if that makes sense. So he never truly returns to Kevin, at least from what we've seen so far. So I wondered if it was more to do with Kevin returning to normality, maybe, or getting to a place of acceptance. I wasn't quite sure. The obvious thing does seem to be, it would be Tom, but Tom's not there at the end, if that makes sense. He's with Laurie, he's not with Kevin, he's not back at home.
Might be getting a Subway or something, you never know.
True, Eat Fresh, very true, very true. And this week's sponsor. No. But it does seem... Yeah, so when you're saying who it could apply to, I didn't think it applied to Wayne in the same way, because he's not really returned, he's died. So unless you're thinking about Return to Send, sending back to the original Return to Sender, him moving on somewhere, I don't think he did return. And then who was the other person you were talking about? Kevin going back to the home. Again, other than the fact that Kevin refers to, in quite a childish manner, Daddy. Again, I struggle to understand the returning there. But I know what you mean. Don't know what you think, Sam.
I think that we should all just keep reading.
Oh, there's going to be more. Write in at Sats Podcast on Twitter. You know, on the Gmail, satsreview@gmail.com. A bit of not so subtle plug in there, but there you go.
And on that point of I think that's a good place to leave it, and a good place to leave season 1 overall. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in as always. Though I think might we take a break from the episode by episode thing. We might come back next week and do a little review of season 1. We haven't fully decided yet, but as ever, thank you so much for sticking with us for another supersized episode. But
supersized episode.
Yes,
I say that every week. I think it's probably just more like
lots of meat.
This is, let's bring in the big meat to the episode.
No, Kevin's bringing the big meat.
And on that point, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.
See you later, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.